Freddy Krueger, Pinhead, Pennywise. What do all these horror icons have in common? These evil figures inspired the Duffer Brothers' creation of Vecna, the ultimate combination of the horror genre's greatest achievements. But Vecna isn't scary because he terrorizes you in your sleep or haunts the town. He weaponizes real-world problems such as trauma, guilt, and depression to overtake his victims. Vecna's curse is an embodiment of those dark times that can become overwhelming and consume our mental well-being just like he consumes his victims. I'm here to show you how the Duffer Brothers used Vecna as their pawn to talk about the dark parts of life that most of us face at some point. This villain's fixation on the things that haunt us most ultimately shows how necessary it is to deal with these issues, otherwise resulting in Vecna's torturous reign of suicide. First, let's go over the chosen time Vecna suddenly appears in Hawkins. It's no coincidence that he's the villain the kids take on this season, when everyone is dealing with their own forms of grief. Starting with the fact that Hopper died when we last saw him, no one knows he's still alive. Will has some confusing feelings to figure out. Nancy still feels guilty about the death of her friend Barb. Elle's getting bullied. The rest of the group in Hawkins is dealing with the woes of high school. And Max, most importantly, is recovering from her brother Billy's gruesome death. This collective rise in everyone's dark and challenging times only entices Vecna since he feeds off vulnerability. So even though his main mission is to find 11, this was the perfect opportunity for him to strike and get the 4 kills he was also on the hunt for. As a part of those 4 kills, Max gets captured along with Chrissy, Fred, and Patrick, who all sadly get taken under his curse. At first glance, the connection between these chosen characters is unclear until episode 3, when Chrissy and Fred are found brutally murdered. Max, played by the wonderful Sadie Sink, uncovers that they both regularly visit the counselor, Miss Kelly, just like she does for help with her issues. Vecna sees how these characters struggle with their pains and burdens, slowly becoming more vulnerable over time, thus why he picks them. Unfortunately, these chosen victims watch their biggest demons bleed into reality as Vecna possesses them and harms them with his villainous, shape-shifting torture. Watching how Vecna stalks and finally kills the chosen teenagers, his methods have a chilling similarity to how invasive and intense depression can be. Each individual starts to gradually see visions of the chiming grandfather clock, alongside their traumas come to life. This clock plays a huge part in Vecna's plans, telling the victim that their time is coming and us, the viewers, how their mental states are spiraling with each visit. Time, interestingly, is typically called a remedy for these emotions and traumas. Generally believe that things always get better with time, but instead, we see that time only worsens Vecna's manifestations of these characters' greatest anxieties, proving it's not so simple as many brush it off to be. In addition to the spiraling, each character's silence and lack of support is what ultimately leads to their breaking points. Starting with Chrissy, her first vision is seen in the bathroom. The walls start closing in on her with their overbearing banging and yelling, mimicking how overwhelming and demanding these emotions can be. Vecna preys on her body issues and attacks her, yet she tells no one about these weird hallucinations. This makes her progressively more susceptible to the final stage in his plan. The same continues as Vecna infiltrates Fred's mind with his dark secrets to become increasingly stronger and harder to fight off. While we don't see Patrick's visions, we know from Max and the remaining characters how eerily the visions slip in, interrupting reality and literally intruding their headspace. Eventually, these characters have nowhere to run and no escape from the problems they privately fight, accurately depicting how unwelcoming the real-life emotions Vecna represents can be. But truthfully, it's Vecna's shameless nature that is the most terrifying part of it all. During the final vision, Vecna reveals himself and has no remorse for the torture he has caused. While this all occurs inside the victim's mind, on the outside they get lifted up in the air, almost as if to physically show how Vecna lifts the weight off their shoulders, and at once their body is mutilated. These connecting themes of silence, solitude, and the stress of such burdens all result in Vecna's curse successfully overpowering and killing each individual. In fact, he sees himself as the hero of these people for ending their suffering and taking them under his wing. His torturous plan overall runs remarkably close to how one's silence can bubble and tragically lead to suicide. It's further hinted at in Max's written cards to her loved ones, a common act done before one commits. And it's even more clear in the way each victim's death empowers him, similar to how suicide has a rippling effect on everyone and not just the lost individual. Vecna gets stronger with every person he takes. Just like suicide does not just subside the pain of one person, but it multiplies the pain and passes it along to others. This overarching message is demonstrated in the final episode with the Upside Down rippling through the dimensions and into the real world, leaving Hawkins in deep despair. The Duffer Brothers present some major themes with Vecna as the most terrifying villain on the show thus far. But what's the main point in his battle with the kids? It's significant how Max and Elle ultimately beat him, as an even more important message about how to deal with the overwhelming horrors our lives can bring. Max's recovery from Vecna's curse delivered one of the most memorable cinematic experiences in series history, from Sadie and Jamie's acting perfectly in tune with Kate Bush's killer vocals to the powerful lesson to be gathered from her escape. Max's entire character arc this season deals with the troubling stages of grief as she distances herself, represses, and even finds alternatives for relief. The same is happening with Elle as she deals with the new town and the relentless bullying from her classmates. Both characters seem to neglect talking about their issues, with Max detaching herself from the group and Elle lying to Mike about what's really going on at school. Max and Elle silently struggle with their respective problems, but they soon learn that this isn't ideal for dealing with their pains, nor can they face Vecna alone. They eventually overcome their biggest rival yet by using the power of love and human connection. In addition to the healing strength of music, Lucas, Steve, and Dustin's supportive presence urge Max to keep running towards the light at the end of the tunnel. She thankfully makes it out alive from under Vecna's hand of death, and the validation she receives for her emotions is what helps her overcome the darkness. Elle also receives the same encouragement from Mike in the final fight scene, using the happy memories of her life and his encouraging words to win against Vecna's evil tactics. But Henry advises Eleven the opposite when teaching her how to beat the bullies in the Rainbow Room. He uses sad, angry, bitter memories to empower his abilities and believes they're more capable than happiness. All in all, Vecna's torturous reign teaches us that yes, darkness appears sometimes, but there's nothing you can't overcome, especially if you allow the support around you to fill your life with some light. Although everything seems hopeless, know that you are not alone.